Small. Wow, tiny.
You are currently listening to Tiny Table,
where we explore TTRPGs you might not have heard of.
Whether big or small, we hope to cover them all.
Because we know that great things can come in tiny packages.
Hey there, Skylar here. Just wanted to take a quick second before the episode to mention that we made a slight whoopsie in regards to the rules for Broke Wizards. We had forgotten that there was a rule where you can't reuse a component until you succeed on a spell with a different one. This doesn't massively affect our play, and I think it only happens between episodes, but we wanted to be accountable as it does slightly color our review for the system. Anyway, that's enough boring accountability on our parts. Back to the show. The Broke Wizards are dead. Grab that duct-taped wand you barely managed to keep together, put on that thrifted wizard's hat of yours, and grab yourself that 6-pack of Celsius that you just managed to afford as we get hyped up and ready for this post-mortem. Welcome on in, everyone.
What a delightful little game.
What a delightful little game indeed. I feel like games like this, like Broke Wizards, are always kind of a fun break for me, if that makes sense. You talk a lot about, Julian, like roll up and smoke 'em type of games. This is one where I felt thoroughly rolled and sufficiently smoked. I felt very relaxed getting to play this, and I think a large part of that, and my first sort of compliment or praise to Broke Wizards, is the fact that it has an incredibly concise and easy to digest rules layout. It's like, what, only a couple dozen pages?
Yeah, it's a super tight design. You can read it in a very brief single sitting. It's similar to Fiasco in that sense, even dramatically shorter than Fiasco even, but it's the type of game like Fiasco that one could just like whip out basically at a moment's notice. Like, I ran an adventure out from the book, but even that is a level of preparation of a story that you probably do not need to run this. There's no like complex math. There's no need for like interlinking story components. It's like, this is a system that lives best when it's nice, simple, funny, and punchy.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it was very fitting for our tiny table, and it's really nice. You know, if you're someone that sometimes gets overwhelmed by the magnitude of a rules book, I think a game like this is super easy. It's not very like intimidating to read. It's very fun. It's snappy. I think it's a great introduction even to someone that maybe enjoys improv, but is maybe the kind of person that doesn't like to play board games and learn all the rules, if that makes sense.
There are basically two major components to Broke Wizards. There is the casting of magic and the management of money. In our play, we didn't get too much into the management of money, aside from the, what I would call, general aesthetics of brokenness. But there is a more detailed money management mechanic that you can engage with if you're going to keep track of misadventures to misadventures. But primarily, we mostly engaged with, I think, the more fun part of Broke Wizards, which is the magic part, which was a blast.
100%. There's a little element I'd love to highlight just because it didn't come up in play so that our audience is aware of this rule. An element that doesn't come up in much of our play is, when is it time to say goodbye to a character if it's a type of game that involves longer storytelling? One thing I quite appreciate about how Broke Wizards handles that wealth mechanic is, A, it's abstracted. You're not keeping track of dollars, cents, shekels, and guilders. Like, it's all kind of just levels of wealth, kind of akin to like Eureka's wealth levels. And it goes up, it goes down based on your misadventures. But if your wizard ever hits a point where their wealth score hits its cap, they're done. Not done, they don't die, but they're no longer a broke wizard, they're just a wizard. So you probably should shift your focus to a new character because they're now at a level of wealth where they don't really need to engage with this kind of scrupulous scrounging for material components core mechanic. So I like that the rules explicitly let you know. It's like, listen, play this game with a character as long as you want, but if they're actually like wildly successful, send them away. Like they did it. They are no longer broke.
Though I do like the visual conception of your wizard winning their, 5th or 6th adventure, finally getting and selling that artifact and hitting 5 out of 5 on their wealth score, and then just exploding like randomly into a burst of gold coins as they've reached like the maximum money cap.
I too wish that rich people would explode into coins. That would be great.
Would solve a lot of problems in real life.
Not naming names, just
I mean,
a thought. No, I agree. I really like that mechanic. There's another game that I played a session or two of called, another like system called Masks, and you play as sidekicks essentially. And yeah, that's the thing, that like once you've kind of worked through your sidekick like mentality and you've kind of grown into a hero, it's like, all right, you're done. And I think that is a unique thing in some TTRPGs that I appreciate. The idea that it's like, all right, it's fleeting. You have a goal to reach, and then you're done.
And it kind of brings in like an interesting thing that I feel you don't see with many other TRPGs necessarily. Like if I think about some of the D&D campaigns, usually when a character left, that was probably the last you saw of them. Whether that player is just trying to make a character that fits the group of the vibe more, or maybe they were only around for a short stint. It's sometimes, at least from my experience, rarer to see those come back. But the idea that your broke wizard could unbroke themselves, and then the next time you see them, you have to come up with, well, how did they get themselves back into debt? What like horrible money tragedy like happened to this person is like really titillating. Like the idea of like bringing a character back because they're now poor again is like kind of hilarious.
You guys would see Rhea back after she hits it big because she discovers Honkai Star Rail.
She gets into gacha games.
it's all over.
It's done for her.
Truly, the deep magics.
That's so funny.
So I think, we all really enjoyed this system. I think the only thing we ever ran into is that because Broke Wizards is so rules light, there's not really a mechanic to help you when you just have bad dice luck.
Yeah, that was something we ran into during the adventure. The way that the dice math works out, it's you get a success on the dice on a 7 or higher on a D10, and then 1s can contribute to disastrous side effects. And you need somewhere between 2 and 6 successes, and you're rolling like 1 to 4 dice usually, and maybe more if you've brought fancy components. But I found that in our play, failure was far and away the more common result, which feels fitting for the notion that these characters should be like failing relatively frequently because they're broke wizards and they lack the standard components. I like that a system, even a wizard with reliable means, will still run into failure decently often, but dramatically less so. But because the only real mechanic for conflict resolution is that magic system, when it just came to the end of the game and it was like, okay, gotta get the crown off the guy's head, failure, we hit a point where we were all kind of mutually going, what can be done here? Like when I said that, if you're 1 under the success level, the target number drops by 1, that one wasn't from the adventure. That was a Julian thing I did to give us a little illusion. Something akin to the whole Eureka system in Eureka, where like failure gives some form of possible progression later on, I feel like could be warranted in a time where you're running the system and you're running like, this is an adventure with a set goal at the end. If you're doing more of kind of like a lazy day with it, then that's not quite so necessary. But when it's more focused, something like that could be beneficial.
I think the idea that we had discussed, I think you titled it like gumption, was kind of like our duct tape solution, where if you make a really good argument, because you can't just like stack up, this imaginary stat infinitely, but it's like you gain a quote unquote gumption whenever you make a really good argument, like you get like 3 or 4 dice out of the maximum of 4 from your DM or the magic, but you fail regardless. And it basically makes it to where like, hey, the level that you need to hit for success is now lowered by 1 on your die for each gumption that you stack until you win, and then it's all gone. And, it could be a thing for just like, not removing failure, and not even removing necessarily the frequency of failure, but making it so that failure doesn't become a stopping point for the story. Because again, in this game, there's no resolution mechanics for anything non-magical, but the fun of the story is to use magic to solve the problems. And so it kind of becomes a whole thing of, well, when dice just don't allow that to happen, what progress can be attained? But aside from that, like, one minor issue, like, even in that, it was still awesome. And even sometimes still failing a roll was awesome or hilarious because of mishaps and because of, like, the other mechanics at play in the magic.
Yeah, as the chronic bad dice luck haver of the world.
Reset the clock.
Reset the clock. This game was really fun, but at a certain point, you can only fail to do the premise of the game so many times in a row before you go, all right, well, how else can I solve this problem? I'm kind of out of options. The story sort of would grind to a halt unless the DM was quick and clever and decided to give us other options to solve the issue.
Yeah. I think what that maybe speaks to is perhaps the misadventure provided in the book, which is the one that we ran, isn't actually necessarily the format you should be running misadventures in for this system. Like, it's there because it's kind of an obvious thing to do, right? Well, what do you do with a game about magic? When in doubt, make a dungeon. I'm never going to complain about when in doubt, make a dungeon. But it's not a game mechanical framework that has like a bunch of different bespoke levers to pull so that if one approach fails in the dungeon, you can pivot and try another approach. Like, the only gradient is the quality of your argument on the spell you cast, but there isn't like some notion that there are different flavors of spells, other modes of non-magical adjudication. So when we ran into that wall, it was just kind of either we throw our hands up and say, I guess our heroes lose, which is not an invalid end state for a story. People don't always win the day, but it wouldn't even necessarily be a very satisfying loss narratively. So finding maybe a different format of story where it's more about a more open-ended scenario and how our characters deal with it, where failure can still result in progress, as opposed to like a linear sequence of rooms where there's a final boss and everyone's sitting here going, okay, we do gotta beat the final boss, though.
Yeah, like, even hearing you say that now, I feel like taking just the general world of, hey, there are wizards and you're broke because you're in wizard college, and instead of making it like, a dungeon crawler, turning it into like a weekly slice of life simulator would instantly solve like most of the problems. Where it's like, okay, how do you use magic to get away with like a minor heist to get that purse that you really want but can't afford at the mall, or solve a really awkward social situation, or maybe try to dodge your ex in a public place. Like, seeing magic in those spaces where failures just leads to like comedy or awkward situations rather than failure meaning you cannot progress, I think would see Broke Wizards thrive, and would be my recommendation for anyone maybe playing the game just trying to scrap something together themselves.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Broke Wizards felt the best when we were in the school. And I feel like I would have loved even like, hey, steal this idea. Would have loved if like the adventure was, how do we get into the frat party?
Yo.
Like,
Wizard
we can't
frats
afford
go
the cover.
crazy.
How do we get into the party? Like, how do we like do this? Like, I really like I like just even us like going from our job to job and like the stupid misadventures that came from that. I feel like that's when I felt the least amount of friction, or I don't even want to call it frustration, maybe just the feeling of being a little lost on how to resolve bigger problems that were like, oh my god, like it's like if I fail an assignment, like it's like fine, but it's like, oh my god, am I leaving this poor like Sigil K employee to be cursed for the rest of his life? Like, that sucks.
Yeah, because I mean, little peek behind the screen, like the entire first episode centers around our characters, the magical school, and our jobs, all of which we made up, like was done by like Julian, like, you know, inserting a lot of this like characters and lore, and us each picking a funny like low income job that we wanted to do. We got a whole episode's worth of content that wasn't even provided within the book itself, aside from like the base premise.
Yeah, ultimately, I think Broke Wizards is about being a broke college kid, so your story should focus around broke college kid shenanigans. I think that's where Broke Wizards really thrives. It really thrives in creativity, in these kind of small moments. You know, it also thrives if you have a very improv-oriented group, and of course, as always, a clever DM. I think it wasn't included in the Broke Wizards texts, but Julian took us all aside and asked us personally, what does the voice of magic sound like for you? And gave our characters each unique magical voices they could talk to, which isn't explicitly written in the rules text. In fact, it doesn't even outline what the voice of magic or how that argument is supposed to go. Again, Broke Wizards is, I think, less than 12 pages, pictures included, so it's a very open-ended framework for you to be creative, and that's where it really thrives.
Yeah, and I think that the area where that shine is at its brightest is, I love the fact that the core mechanic of this game is, it's banter, it's arguing. The dice are there to give you your binary yes, no, does this work at the end of it, but the rolling of the dice is not the core mechanic. That's like that's the period at the end of the sentence. But the sentence is like this gestalt argument you scrounge together trying to like yes and with your own little bag of tools to your DM being like, no, it'll totally work if I like take this and I do that with it, like, which is great because that is a thing that will naturally occur in so many games. The like little pushing your own argument to the DM moment where you like make your case and say like, DM, I think my character can do this because of X, Y, and Z, and pretty please, and I'm such a special princess, and will you let me do this? Can I please roll? And I love taking what is in practice, like that back and forth is not enumerated in the rules text for almost any game, but it is natural practice for almost every game. So taking that and putting that at the forefront is such a genius piece of design. I think it's delightful. And I was originally a little worried when I read the rules that this argument mechanic wouldn't be fleshed out enough, that I would be like, oh, I give 1 through 4 dice. What really tells me what's a 2 versus a 3 versus a 4? Having played it, I think it's the exact right level of specificity. I think 4 is the exact right amount of possible results, and you'll just kind of find the vibe for you of what is a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4 for you. For me, 1 is like, you barely tried, I'm not really convinced. 2 is like, sure, you've put forth an argument, but it wasn't very compelling. 3 was like, okay, that's a pretty compelling argument, you added some nuance to it, I think you did a good job. And 4 is like, wow, you blew my mind, you really made an awesome case for yourself.
Yeah, it is kind of funny hearing you like bring up that this is something that occurs naturally, because I'm thinking back to like times where I played like D&D and I'm like a big golem and I'm like, all right, DM, here's what I want to do. My partner just set up this platform. I want to vault off the platform and then cast enlarge on myself just over the bad guy so I can give them the people's elbow. And this should definitely work. There's no mechanics for it. I know you'll have to make up rules and numbers and math on the fly, and I'm putting like hell for you personally to solve, but could be pretty sick, right?
Be pretty cool,
and
right?
Just think about all the times I've done that you could probably find an instance in maybe every other game we've played. I have tried to pull some shenanigans. I'm thinking like double cannonballs in Morkborg. Like, you know, every time we got into something, I feel like this was just a natural thing that I wanted to do, to explore the depth of any system that we're exploring, and to take that natural urge that the players have, because everyone wants their characters to succeed, and making that the core mechanic is truly just genius. It's a lot of fun.
Julian, after the game, brought up a little tweak, which I think might make this slightly easier, was just changing the target number from 7 to 6. Just that little tiny math tweak might have made things move smoother. But, this is also a game about being brokies with shitty equipment, which means you're probably gonna fail. And, part of the thing is to have fun arguing with the magic. I think that's probably the core engagement. The game's opinion is that, you can try your best and you can argue the hell out of it, but sometimes you just got shitty stuff and you brokey as hell.
100%.
Yeah.
And speaking of we brought up the voice of magic thing that I had the notion to do before. Again, not explicitly a mechanic in this game. That was some of my favorite part of it, was making the argument slightly more of a two-sided conversation and not purely a monologue into the void. To the point where I'm like, listen, if you're running a game where magic is even remotely an unreliable force in the narrative, give that motherfucker a voice. Put a accent and an affect and an attitude on that thing, and see what comes of it, because so many entertaining scenes were had just by exploring these evolving relationships between the characters and their version of the magic. We got there were moments where the characters would feel a sense of entitlement to it. There was groveling, there was pledges of loyalty, there was empathy, direct threats. There was such a wide array of natural responses to be made just by giving the magic a character, as opposed to just saying, oh, it's the ephemeral and unknowable forces of magic, and your plea is either heard by magic happening or it's not heard by magic not happening. Turning it into that muddier, more human, dramatic mode made it so entertaining. Even when we were coming back to it over and over again, I was never getting tired of those interactions.
And I think it helps sort of lean into that argument-based core concept, where an argument can't just be one person monologuing, it's a dialogue. And so giving that magic, a voice was very helpful.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just now thinking back to the ways we would structure our arguments based around the voices of magic that we were given. Anytime Mo was on screen, they're like, Master, think of how strong I'll become. Think of the cause. They're bringing up pseudo reality where they become a dragonborn or something, or whatever was going on in Mo's head. And sometimes that would add to their argument. They'd be like, well, yeah, you advocated for yourself to your voice of magic. And I remember for Crisscross, at one point he's just like, hey, Magic, you're looking great today, by the way. How are you doing? And being the different angles each of us would come up with is really funny. And I think, like we said, don't just give it a voice. Go even further. Do like Julian, to give it multiple voices. I think the distinct personalities create such unique dynamics and interplay in relationships that, as a little tiny table homebrew rule to throw in, we think that one will highly add to the experience.
100%.
And with that, I think we have concluded our post-mortem of Broke Wizards. Again, thank you to our community for voting on Broke Wizards, both on our Tumblr and our Patreon. We will continue to do polls like this. It was really amazing to connect with the community and see so many games. This community has so much talent, and it has been such an honor that all these creators want us to showcase their work, so we plan on continuing to do so. So please check out our Tumblr or subscribe to our Patreon. We'll be making posts there about when we're posting new polls. And if you join our mini tier, you'll be able to do the finalist vote. But we're also excited to announce that our next game will be Black Mass.
Ooh. I've been sitting on this game for so long.
I think we actually talk about it in our get to know us of we want to play this game, and we're finally doing it.
I'm finally glad to get around to it. But for the time being, if you enjoyed this little talk about Broke Wizards, well, get ready for a little more, as coming up after this, we'll be having our interview with Sabrina herself. So look forward to that. Ooh.
All right. right, we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
And with that,
Hi, and thank you for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then we'd really appreciate if you left us a review. If you really like what we do here and want to support us further, you can join us at patreon.com/tinytablepodcast. Our business email is also open for inquiries at tinytablebusiness@gmail.com, and all of our socials can be found in the episode description for any shenanigans you might want to follow. Till next time, see ya!